Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah. Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Night on DJNTV. Tuesday night means that there's fabulous things on board for you tonight. That's right. Oh, wait, what were those things?
I was hoping you knew. I was waiting. I was like, I thought, oh, good. He's got things.
We've got a plan. Yes, we do. We do. This is actually tonight's topic. We can thank our one and only graphics man, Jimmy, with this one.
Jimmy is the man. Jimmy is the man.
He does the wonderful graphics, and he came out with this one. And after Ben, he mentioned it. It was ironic. Today I'm working at a church, and they brought up a variation of this question and this topic. So I think it might be an appropriate one for us to dig into this week, which is wireless audio.
Well, let her rip. We've covered a few different aspects of wireless audio, but I get a sneaking suspicion we're going to dive a little deeper into some of the physics of it.
I think there's going to be a little bit of that tonight. So what the question is becoming, and well, let's kind of set the stage of why this question is important, is for a lot of us, we are now outdoors with our events. And granted, it's the winter time, so not so much up in the upper Midwest, but we're getting ready for the upcoming season, except for today's situation, which I'll cover in a second. But the idea is we're outdoors and we're having to cover larger areas, and we want to have sound here and over there and over there, somewhere on somebody's half-acre home site. And sometimes that means a speaker in a front yard, sometimes at the side of the house, what have you. And cables can't be run everywhere. Wireless audio becomes...
That's not really a new... I think that the mandate is new. I think the way that we... the needs have changed because of the current situation with the pandemic, but certainly wanting to have wireless audio is not new. I think you and I did a show 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe we were just that far ahead of the curve, but I don't think so. I think people were, as my friend Alan, who's undoubtedly watching, will point out, he was doing this before I was. So
I'm looking for that comment too. Alan, are you? No, he's not there.
It'll be. You just wait. It'll be there. Remember, I have your rubber chicken held hostage, Alan. So just be careful what you say. Anyway, but I think that, like you said, now we have different reasons for wanting to do that. Be it remote speaker or something else. But I think even when things go back to what might be more familiar to us prior to January of this year, I think wireless audio is still going to have value. In fact, I was just talking to our mutual good friend Bill Herman today, and we were talking about how change is uncomfortable and change is unpleasant, especially for old dogs like me and Bill, and not you, but little known secret, viewers, John's actually older than me. Anyway, crazy stuff. Anyway, but Bill and I were talking about, change is also an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to not only embrace the future, but to shape the future.
For sure. And I think this is one of those opportunities where there's got to be a lot of embracing.
Well, and
but it is social distance.
It's hard because like you and like Bill, I've been doing things in this industry for a very long time. I realize that I've been doing this almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And viewers, I know I look young, but it's just we have a great makeup tech for this show.
It's the chef in the kitchen has been making such great food. It just takes years off your life.
I was going to say it's a Snapchat filter.
Oh, wait, no, it adds years to your life. Wait a second. I don't know. Anyway.
But I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And, I guess it just occurred to me today that I'm no longer the new kid on the block, and obviously I love technology and I'm trying to stay at the forefront of it. And that's a daily challenge. But it is a thing where we all probably in some way or another we have patterns, we get kind of dragged into routines. This is the way we do it sort of thing. And so I think this is an opportunity to take some of the tried and true technologies, some of the emerging technologies, and to look at how we can innovate and shape our industry in a way to the future. And believe me, the innovators will be the winners.
And there's opportunity for innovation for right now for surely. So we're going to talk about some different methods of wireless audio and looking at some of the pros, the cons, and we mentioned, of course, latency as an issue because there's some things that work better than others, some things that are cheaper or less expensive than others, and some things that are more legal than others. Have I covered the bases?
Yeah, you did very well.
So let's start today's situation. I was helping at a church. They were needing to pull a wire through a chase, and they've been talking about and some of the older parishioners at the church. They have not been coming into the church because they would come up and they drive up near the front door because they have an exterior speaker that would allow them to hear the service from outside. Their thought is there could become a time that the pastor, because of the cases going up, the people being concerned, they want to still have that time where they can see each other and wave to each other, that they may be back to in the winter in Minnesota doing service in the parking lot. So the pastor would basically be either inside the entry by the glass doors or by a window or something where people can see them doing the sermon and transmitting audio to the vehicles. So that we'll start with that. In winter, we're not going to have car windows down so they can hear speakers outside. The first thing they mentioned was FM, an FM transmitter. Let's kind of dig into that. What are some of the pros and cons with an FM transmitter of sending audio like that?
Well, the first thing I'll say, I think this what I'm about to say really almost is a future show. And I actually literally just got done teaching a master class on this. But the thing we have to remember, as opposed to mixing live sound, and mixing live sound is basically just adding quiet things to loud things. Stole that from a friend of mine who's the former chief audio engineer at Oral Roberts TV, but he said it so well, I just wanted to steal that. And I had to give him a little credit there. Mm-hmm. But when we start talking about people in cars, it's really the same as a live stream, in that your viewers are in a vacuum, and you need to mix your sound for the people who are in a vacuum. So if it's just spoken word, of course, that's one thing. If there's any type of a worship team, that's another thing. But that might be a good future topic to talk about. How do we mix for a live stream? How do we mix for viewers in the broadcast realm? And why that's so tricky, not to take away from all of our future showtime, but why that's so tricky is right now you're watching this show on some device, and we have no idea what it is.
Right.
Is it stereo? Is it mono? Is it a computer? Is it a TV? Is it a phone? And when you're mixing live sound for music, that's much more complicated. That's why those mastering guys make the big bucks. But anyway, future show.
I jotted it down on the list. Yeah.
Talking about the radio propagation aspect of it, a couple things. One, I think everybody's really familiar with FM. Frequency modulation. It's in your car radio. It's in your boombox. Yes, I said boombox. I know. Wow. I just got been saying I was old, so just roll with it. Okay. But that's right. My wife has been binge watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, by the way, so it's like a flashback to our youth.
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yes. Astounding to look back at Will Smith's career, by the way, and look where he's gone. And you look back and you see, even then, you're like, oh yeah, this dude was super talented. Mm-hmm. Just right then you could just sort of see, you're like, oh yeah, he was always bigger than the walls of the sitcom. He's, and obviously we've seen where that went. But anyway, so a couple things to bear in mind here. One is, I think probably the biggest one is legality. Because FM radio is regulated and there are radio stations, there are licenses required if you operate at a sufficient power or distance. And it's really murky. Read all you want about the FCC's Part 15, but I'll give you the very clear explanation as oversimplified as I can. Basically, your device should not be capable of transmitting more than 200 feet. Now, put a pause on that. We all know that there is things like atmospheric bounce, and maybe sometimes we're driving and we can pick up a radio station further than normal. So we've sold many FCC Part 15 compliant transmitters that have gone as far as 500 feet. They're not designed for that. There's, really probably no issue from the FCC because the devices are compliant, but they can also go less than 200 feet. RF is very environmental, and that'll be a recurring theme throughout the show, I'm sure, is to say that RF has very little guarantees in the way of distance. In fact, here's another great way to drive the point home for everybody who's watching, because you probably all used a wireless microphone, a UHF wireless microphone. Guess what? That's FM. Same stuff, different frequency, as opposed to, 92, megahertz, it's, 500 megahertz, whatever. Same method of propagating a signal. So, sometimes your wireless mic goes a long way, sometimes it don't.
Right.
Has a lot to do with the environment. It has a lot to do with the clarity of your channel, and it has a lot to do with the equipment you're using, both on the sending and receiving end. And in this case, the receiving end is different for everybody.
Yeah, because of in this, if all different cars, vehicles, or some of them might be bringing their big ghetto blaster boombox.
I hope so. That would be epic. I've already put my pastor on notice that when we go back to meeting in church, my church is still not meeting in person, but when we go back, I am wearing pajamas to church because I've just gotten used to that.
Oh,
now.
yeah, exactly. So, it's just how I want pajamas and I want my cup of coffee.
Oh, I already brought the cup of coffee, and I was like, listen, just nobody even questioned it. They're like, oh, that's Ben. He's an audio guy. Just let him have his coffee.
It's coffee. If he's going to be on Sundays, he'll need his coffee.
They also understand why I have my cell phone on in church, and I really don't want to take a message or a call on Sunday. I really don't. I mean, that just sort of defeats the purpose for me. But they do understand that we have, hundreds of churches across the country that are using technology that we've provided, and in emergency situations, my phone is on. So, and
all of a sudden, oh no, it's not working.
Well, but that's when they do their business. I mean, Sunday morning that's
showtime.
It's go time. Yeah. So
yeah, that it is. So
I'm happy to report that it rarely ever rings, maybe literally once or twice a year.
Nice.
We try to do a pretty good job of taking care of everybody during the week so that Sunday they're good to go.
Yeah. And I think that's as more people have become more familiar with the technology, especially with the streaming side. That was another discussion we had today. When I was there streaming at that church 4 or 5 years ago, and what I was doing then, they thought it was it was like voodoo magic. And now today, because they've all, even at 60 years old, have experienced Zoom, when I start talking about different aspects of it, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, now I understand, because it's come along.
The consumption has changed. Again, that's a future show, but I just literally taught a masterclass on that, and you're absolutely 100% right. So that I think kind of covers FM. Basically, the obvious tip here is avoid anything that's populated by a local radio station, and most of these FM transmitters don't have a scanner, so you get to be the scanner. Mm-hmm. Sit in your car and just go through the dial and find a nice open space, nothing but some low static, and go there.
So let's talk about latency when it comes to doing a radio transmitter like that. If somebody would say, oh, I want to have a monitor to hear what's going out to the cars, and if they put a boombox in front of them, how much of a latency are they going to experience?
Virtually none.
Okay.
Radio waves travel at the speed of light, which I can give you 3 different ways. It's 186,000 miles per second. It's 300 million meters per second. Approximately, it's like 299 something, or about 984 million feet per second. So any way you slice it, that's really freaking fast. Indistinguishable to a human being. And FM is analog. So basically we have no latency in the system. It's almost instantaneous. Same with an analog wireless microphone. It's virtually instantaneous, almost immeasurably so. Where this would be different, say different and difficult at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say difficult.
Hey, you watch this show to learn, and I just taught you a word. Did you write it down?
Difficult.
So. Okay. So I forgot my own word. Well, it's a live show. That's how you go. This is just water. I'm going to tell you that right now.
But in an epic mug.
It is an epic water. But we could talk a little bit about digital transmission methods. And that is not to say that FM can't be digital, because when we talk about UHF microphones, there are digital UHF microphones like SLXD, QLXD, ULXD. But there we do have some latency. It is not due to the distance. It is not due to the transmission method. It's due to the encoding, the changing of the analog signal to digital and back. In like a UHF or an FM system, particularly UHF microphones, we have something called companding, which is compressing and expanding, but it's essentially an instantaneous process. So no latency. And basically, here's where the issue is going to be, if there is one. If you have a sound system that is supplementary, the speed of sound is very slow compared to the speed of light, 1,128 feet per second, give or take. It depends on temperature. And by the way, bad news, Minnesota, it slows down in the cold, just like everything else.
Oh,
weird, right?
makes sense.
It also depends on humidity, and the lower the humidity, the slower it is. So yeah, it's not like it makes a world of difference in terms of that perceptive difference, but that's why we can measure the distance of lightning by timing the thunder. Is the speed of light is very fast, as we talked about, 984 million feet per second, and speed of sound 1,128 feet per second. So we're talking about like 984 million versus 1,000, right?
A little difference.
Yeah. Huge. So if you're sitting in the car and you're listening to the radio waves are traveling at the same speed as the light coming to your eye from the pastor. So it all pretty much should sync, should be pretty close to meshed up. Mm-hmm. However, as you know, if you're standing a ways back at a concert, the sound doesn't quite mesh with the stage anymore. And that's because the sound travels much slower than the light.
I guess I wouldn't have expected that. I would have figured the FM had a little bit more latency in that situation.
Well, virtually none. Now, there are I don't want to get ahead of you, but we talked a little bit about the latency in digital mic systems. There are other places latency involves, again, besides the speed of sound, but it isn't the radio wave. It's the transmission encoding, basically. Mm-hmm. And so I'll let you lead us.
Alan, I'm guessing that is the encoding is happening if we step into the Bluetooth world.
Oh yeah,
that has to be because.
Stepped into it is a pretty good way to describe it. Now, I'm not anti-Bluetooth. I use all kinds of Bluetooth devices. Not too many for audio, though. And when I do, I try to think about what they're for. Now, that's not to say that Bluetooth audio is a bad thing. You just have to think about what it is and how it works and use it in the right ways. Mm-hmm. So the latency on a Bluetooth system can be as low as, meaning it never is, like 32 milliseconds, which is actually quite a ways. That's like about the same as the distance if we were about 40 feet away or something, Okay. So pretty substantial amount of latency, and it can be as bad as 300 milliseconds. So now, if you're listening to a song off your phone, it's a non-issue. Frankly, you wouldn't even know. Right. How would you know? You just hear it when you hear it. It's a problem, though, if you're trying to use it for live audio. Mm-hmm. So... and they're also, I want to address this though. I'm going to defend Bluetooth now that I said their latency is kind of awful. A lot of things have changed with Bluetooth, particularly with the range. And they're on Bluetooth 5 now, and it's I had to write this down. What are they on now? LE1M. The LE1M packets, has extended the range substantially, and also the amount of bandwidth it can carry. And so there are a couple different methods of sending audio over Bluetooth. We sort of know about codecs and that sort of thing. SBC, which is the subband coding, has been the standard forever and ever and ever. But there's a new one, aptX, that I just got done, as we say in the Midwest, the other day, could be years ago, but this wasn't years ago because it's fairly new technology. And I was looking at some spectral measurements and some of research that's being done as to how does aptX stack up against an uncompressed file versus SBC versus MP3 encoding, and actually pretty good. It's actually not bad at all. I mean, it's certainly adequate. If you're playing MP3s, it's better than an MP3. So, but anyway, those are the. So I'll give Bluetooth some defense there, but I'll say in terms of live audio, not a fan. That's not me. Not saying you can't do it. It's a free country. Do whatever you want, but the latency is, to me, is a deal breaker. And I'll just say it in these terms: in the live sound realm, we use digital mixing boards and digital snakes and that sort of thing, and all of these things introduce latency on some level. Some of the latency is less than a millisecond. Some of these consoles are very fast. Some of the wireless mics are a little bit more. Like QLXD is 2.9 milliseconds. Still totally acceptable, but it all adds up. Mm-hmm. And when you think about a musician singing in a microphone, then that sound goes to the mixing board, gets processed, and then comes back to their in-ear monitor. If it's more than 5 milliseconds, it might start to feel a little weird to them. And if it's more than 7 milliseconds, it can make it hard for them to kind of stay in the groove.
Right. Yes.
Starting to knock them off their peg a little bit here. And that's a very sensitive thing. And if it's more than 10 milliseconds, it's becoming noticeable and distinguishable to the audience. Now, I feel a rabbit hole coming on.
Or you could pause, and then I will take us back into the direction in which there will not be rabbit holes.
All right. But remind me it's a fun rabbit hole, though. I want to talk about the Haas effect. So we'll come back to the rabbit hole of the Haas effect. But anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like that's a fun topic. Haas effect.
Well, it is kind of cool. It's also
okay. So what's the Haas effect? Because
I knew you couldn't resist.
I'll never remember.
Basically, the Haas effect is used to create the illusion of an expanded stereo image by creating delay on one channel. And this actually works in the reverse for a little bit. That small amounts of delay actually increase a sense of focus. But beginning to move beyond that a little bit, you start to create a wider stereo image. And anything, I think the Haas effect number is 40 milliseconds, but the Haas effect too is from like the 1940s. So that might have been updated by now. Studio guys, if you're watching, feel free to chime in. But basically the general rule is that sounds that are within 40 milliseconds of each other will still be perceived as having come from the same source. So it still sounds like the same source, but it expands the stereo image, creates that kind of psychoacoustic illusion in your mind.
Sure.
However, it's good when we do it on purpose, and it's bad when it happens on accident and we don't know what we're doing and it gets away from us. Bottom line, Bluetooth latency, unacceptable for live audio. I just don't think that works in my mind. So
now Bluetooth, FM, we have our transmitter. There's no latency. We have latency in Bluetooth. FM, I can have one transmitter and multiple receivers. Bluetooth is a one-to-one connection.
It can be one-to-many, but every receiver has to be paired, and that is very dependent on the devices on both ends. Some versions of Bluetooth allow for one-to-many. Others are one-to-one.
Okay.
So, and that would be a real problem if you are not controlling all the hardware. It's a mixed bag at that point. You have no idea. Again, one of the really awesome things about Bluetooth is it's more or less a standard, although it's emerged a lot. All Bluetooth is not created equal, right? But you can take one brand of computer and another brand of phone and another brand of speaker, and they can all communicate via Bluetooth. But you can't simply say, I have 3 speakers and 1 phone, and now I can broadcast to all of them. It's dependent on all of that hardware.
And then, of course, distance is the final part of it. With the FM transmitter, on a typical, we can get up to 200 feet if things are in a good situation. Bluetooth distances are much shorter. Well,
Bluetooth itself has a distance calculator on their website you can play with. And what I find so fascinating about it is there's really no answer because you can change any number of variables to get different results. So I did play with it, and a couple things to remember. RF is always environmental, and Bluetooth operates at 2.4 gigahertz, the exact same as Wi-Fi and a million other things. So if that's really crowded, your range is not going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Simple fact. Your range is not going to be good. At some point, the receiving radio has to be able to distinguish what the signal is and turn it back into meaningful data, the ones and zeros that we are going to decode into sound in this case. But using kind of the default settings, and again, it gets into receiver sensitivity, gets into transmission power, blah, 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 blah. If you get bored, more bored, you are watching the show, but if you get more bored later, go to the Bluetooth website and just play to your heart's content. Using the LE1M packets, you will see a typical range of about 26 meters.
Wow.
And this is the latest. Now if you have an older version of Bluetooth, you might get 10 feet.
Yeah.
Right? It really depends. So they've come a long way, though. This is Bluetooth 5. 26 meters, that's about 100 feet, 95 feet, give or take, up to outdoors. Again, line of sight, clean channel, 78 meters, which is about 250 feet. So Bluetooth, but it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And RF is always environmental, but Bluetooth in particular can become a real crapshoot. Bear in mind also that with Bluetooth, it's a two-way communication. So you are limited by the weakest point,
Which could be the receiver.
Yeah, it could unpair basically because so not what Bluetooth is for. I think Bluetooth is great for playing music from your phone to your PA when you don't want to have a bunch of stuff set up. I think it's great for in your car. I think it's great for wireless mice. I do not see Bluetooth at this time as a viable solution for performance grade live audio. And I don't see it in the future due to the latency either. So many other good ways to do that. There are other digital audio methods of transport, a wide variety of them, each with pros and cons. We've talked about in the past things like doing wireless speakers with IEM systems. The overwhelming majority operate on an analog propagation method using FM type transmission in the wireless mic range, where there is no limit for distance now. There's limits for power. But with good antennas and we can comfortably go many hundreds of feet.
And the downfall of using like an in-ear, because that was actually where we're going to next, because our good friend Alan just made reference to, I think, did he do that? Yeah, with his in-ear monitors and the paddles, he can do up to 800 feet, which that's got to be illegal, especially in his neck of the woods. I hope the police department doesn't come and bust him.
Well, if he didn't work there,
well, there is that, but
Anyway, no, it's not. It's not illegal because in the same way that FM transmitter can go more than 200 feet and still be Part 15 compliant, the FCC has ruled that these devices are compliant. So they're like, hey, you're operating at 50 milliwatts or less. If it's your good fortune with good antennas, you can send this thing a country mile, so be it. And by the way, I've seen these things work at almost a mile.
Wow.
That's a really rare day, but it just makes for the example. 800 feet, absolutely. Would I guarantee it? Not on your life. 500 feet, you bet. I see it at football stadiums all the time. But RF is environmental. Anyway, that's why I think the wireless IEMs are still the best choice right now for wireless audio. It can be broadcast. You can have as many receivers as you want. And it can be done very cost effectively and very reliably. It's in frequency that we have fairly good control over in the, TV band. Now, you may not feel like we do, viewers. If you're frustrated with your wireless, please, John and I've done a lot of shows on wireless. I feel like I give the links out every day. It's really, your eyes will be opened and the load will be lifted a little bit. In some ways, you might be a little more frustrated because you'll see some of the challenges, but you'll also see the roadmap for how we deal with them.
Yeah, some people are talking about in-ear monitors and that you've gotten some people hooked up with the systems here and they've been using them successfully on job sites. So
I just speak the truth as I see it,
So then let's just kind of, so the in-ear monitor system would be a transmitter, and it could be broadcast to a number of packs, receivers. The downfall is that those receivers are not built into the cars in our church situation.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do it in the parking lot scenario because you'd have to give one to everybody.
Everyone would have to have one, and they're a little bit. But as one of the questions Day and Night asked here, John asked if that would be the best option for doing the speakers around the area.
Absolutely,
and especially now, how would latency be with those?
There isn't any. The only latency you're going to have, just like we talked about, is going to be from the speed of sound. So if you're hearing two speakers, that's where the latency will be. The transmission latency is non-existent. It's immeasurable. You'll never hear it. I guarantee you that. It's less than fractions of a millisecond, microseconds at most, because it's speed of light and it's analog companding. I think that would be absolutely the way to do that. But listen, engineering is always a series of compromises. So when we look at the application and we say, okay, well, we've got to send sound to 50 cars, let's get 50 IEM packs. No, that's a terrible idea. Use their built-in radio. Engineering dictates that's the way to do it, right?
Sure.
If we say we want to put wireless speakers around, yeah, now I'd use wireless IEM packs for sure. If you say, well, I just want to send sound to my speaker and it has built-in Bluetooth radio, should I go get a second, IEM system? No, I just use Bluetooth for that. It's sort of the circumstance will guide you to the solution. And if it doesn't, I will.
Precisely. And that's one of the big things is that you've worked with this, you've seen the technologies. If a person has a specific application, they can give you a call and say, hey, Ben, what do you recommend? What piece should I buy? And, oh, by the way, can you ship it to me? Yeah, we can do all of those things, by the way, except FM transmitters right now. They're back ordered. So if you want one, they're still, I was wondering if that had caught up yet. We did briefly, but then again, as the surge of cases rose, I think people said, I think we're still going to be doing this. So listen, if you want to get one for this year, and by the way, people will be buying these for Christmas displays. So that will create an additional surge on these things, just a seasonal surge, which hopefully is good. The manufacturers hopefully figured this out now. But if you want to get one for this year, please call and reserve one with us. No charge until it ships. We don't want to hang on to your money for a month or whatever, but do get your name on one or you're going to be pretty sad. A question about the in-ear monitors. If you were doing a large school dance and you were in a large gymnasium, could you have a tower of speakers in each corner and running the in-ear monitor system to power all 4 stacks of speakers? Absolutely. And the IEMs are in stock, by the way. We got a handle on those. We got good stock on those. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think I would maybe, there's some pros and cons about going into the corners, and that goes into some of our previous shows about speaker placement. Right. And the answer, of course, as always, is it depends. But yeah, as far as distance in a gym, that doesn't scare me at all. Not a problem. Wonderful. I think that wraps up our show. We've covered our different methods. The pros and the cons. I think we're there. So, Jimmy, thank you for the topic tonight. That was a good discussion on that. And if you guys have got anything you'd like to hear us talk about and cover in one of the shows, we're kind of getting our shows lined up for the winter months here. So if there's something that you're like, gosh, I'd really like to know more about that, what we'll do is we'll find an expert to come in here and then we'll disagree with him the whole time. It'll be a great show. Sounds good. Who's going to be our sacrificial lamb? It'll just depend on who it is, or what the topic is. If it's a color, if somebody wants to talk about the greatness of the color blue, we'll just we'll just clearly red is better. It's a longer wavelength, so I mean, the whole Doppler effect. Wobbling stars, red, blue. By the way, if you really get bored and you're stuck inside and you want to see what I'm talking about, take one of your LED lights and program it to flash between red and blue and point it at a wall. And it'll look like the wall is coming towards you and moving back, coming to it. That's the Doppler effect in light, because red wavelengths are longer than blue wavelengths. So I'll have to have fun with that. You're welcome. I'll have to try that now. The experiment. That'd be kind of fun though, John. To get like you could get like expert cage match. That would be an expert celebrity nerd death match. That would be great. Well, gang, we're gonna wrap things up. We'll be back in about 25 minutes. Tonight's show, the next show we're doing with Brian and Jay is going to be a little bit different. We're going to start on YouTube. You'll be able to find it there, but we're going to be transitioning over to a different player, and we'll talk about that more. So if you want to find it on YouTube, you'll see that there's a link to go to a website. That's where the actual music side is going to be tonight, because Brian is going to go through. Brian knows Jay and I pretty well. And we've basically given him the job of going and picking 10 songs that he thinks Jay would like and 10 songs that he thinks I would like. Basically, if Brian were going to be a DJ and he wanted to surprise us with some songs that he thinks would be, in our wheelhouse. This could be interesting. I'm going to spoil the show and tell you all 20 of them are going to be yacht rock. So. No, they probably will be, but picking out yacht rock that will, fit. It's not something that I'll be like, what? I've never heard that. What? It sounds stupid. That's what we're trying to see if we can avoid tonight. So you better watch the show to find out, viewers. We'll be back in about 25 minutes. Thank you guys for being with us. Good night, everybody.